Hi, and thank you for tuning into this podcast. My name is Shay Ryan Douglas, and in this series, we explore community connection, optimal human potential, and transformational collective growth through inspiring conversations with a diverse range of people who are working towards a positive change in the world. I hope you enjoy this episode today, and if you would please take the time to like, share, and subscribe, we would greatly appreciate that. And I hope you enjoy. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode with Dr. E TV. My name is Shay Ryan Douglas, and I'm here with the famous Dr. Espen. Today we're going to, how are you doing today, mate?
I'm awesome.
Fantastic. I just want to thank you guys for tuning in to watch this. If you find this relevant and you want to share this video, that'd be fantastic. Leave us a comment if you have any questions, and you're invited to like this video as well to help it share the love a little bit. But today we're going to be talking about the quantum experience that Dr. Espen has just presented here in Far North Queensland, in Cairns and in Townsville. Unbelievable event, had hundreds of people attend, which we live streamed. So it was just the first time ever that we had the experience of simultaneously getting this out to the world, where we need this information out to the masses more than ever. And it was such a privilege to work alongside Dr. Espen and his team to get this valuable information out to all of you guys through the quantum experience. And Dr. Espen is going to tell us a little bit about that, as well as we've got a special guest announcement coming up next week. We're going to talk about in a little bit. But first, I want to just hand it over to Dr. E. Tell us a little bit about how the weekend went. You had 2 action-packed days where you're in Townsville, then you're up in Cairns, presenting to hundreds of people, bringing them the quantum experience. Beautiful, life-changing opportunity for people just to dabble their tiptoes into that experience. And then what is the next steps for those that are interested, those who are wanting to learn more, those who want to dive deeper? Where do they go and what do they do?
It just makes me smile because do you remember the first time we met?
I do.
So yeah. Shay comes up to me with a camera like this. He goes, "Hey, Dr. E, do you mind if I da-da?" And we just started interviewing me like on the spot. And I'm like, good energy. I remember that was my first thought. He's a switched on man and he's got good energy. The quantum experience is just that. You get to connect with conscious people. You get to meet people that want to raise their vibration, that want to work on themselves, that want to learn how to use quantum science and consciousness to bridge the gap between science and spirituality in their lives, right? To work on ourselves and to grow ourselves and to heal ourselves and to be the best that we can be for the people that we love. That's where it started for you and I, Shay, and for many as well. So it's an introductory event where you get to come and hang out, 4 hours of quantum science and consciousness. And we actually added in the breathing experience now that we've never done in free events before, the quantum breath, which without getting into too much detail, may just help your brain secrete incredible chemicals that have the potential to give you an out-of-body mystical and also very healing and joyful experience. So yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, it was huge. That was really powerful moment actually up here in Cairns at the Colonial Club. Over 100 people in the hall, and a beautiful facilitator team there to help guide people through that process in a really safe and comfortable way. And just the power of the room, I was there filming it, live streaming it to all the channels. You can find it there. We have removed it, but we will be uploading it for you guys to follow in again. And it was just like the energy in that space was phenomenal. That was something truly unique. And breathwork is something I find that is so simple yet powerful. And to have a beautiful team to guide everyone through that process was just like mind blowing. It's beautiful, heart opening, and just wow.
Yeah, lots of tears, lots of laughter, lots of transformation. And you got to remember the first thing that happens when we're born is as we enter, we take a breath. And that is life. Breath is life. So let's take a breath and just relax into the body. And remember the first lesson that the Buddha taught us on meditation was, now I'm breathing in, so let's take a breath in. And now I'm breathing out, and knowing the difference between the inhale and the exhale. All right, and that's powerful. None of us are alive without the breath. And the breath is the secret and the key. I always say, in simplicity lies freedom. What if your freedom could be found in something as simple as your breath. So as a yoga meditation teacher, this is a fundamental principle, because you can only live in the present moment. You can only be a masterful manifestor and co-creator of your life into a higher frequency when you are able to be present with your breath. The only place a masterful manifestor lives is in the present moment. So yes, it is timely. You know, Wim Hof, the incredible man, has showed us the power of breath, and they can supercharge the entire body. Now thousands of people are doing it across the world, and it is a tool to awaken. It is through breath. And so, yeah, it was a privilege. And for those of you who haven't done breath work, I would really encourage you to look inwards and start to, you know, maybe be aware of how many times a day you are aware of your breath, and really use the breath, really, really anchor in that breath. And then when you're ready, you can come and breathe with us, and we shall take a journey into the field together.
I love it, man. It's so good. And you're right, it is super powerful. I just want to acknowledge Nathan. He's just left the comments. Ho, Dr. Espen and Shay. How you doing, Nathan? And any of you watching now, just leave us the comments where you're tuning in from. And if you have any questions, we've got Linda saying greetings. Hello, Linda. So nice to see you. This is really exciting because Dr. E, we started this TV podcast. So we've been doing lots of videos every week and bringing in different guests. A couple of weeks back, we had a phenomenal conscious media creator being in the name of Ben Joseph Stewart, phenomenal human. And it was just awesome to be a part of that conversation where you and him really broke down some of these, you know, quite complex notions like awakening and in the process of awakening and how the breath can help. And really together you broke it down in simple terms and looked at how, you know, everyone can implement these into their life to really better themselves, understand themselves on a deeper level, and grow through this transitional time that we're in. Do you want to tell us a little bit about some of the episodes that we've done so far with Dr. ETV?
Oh, man, it's a privilege because it really helps us also stay in the work, you know, because we've got to practice what we preach. We can't sell what we don't own. So it enables us to really work at our best and authentic, which is the only place I think you really can teach from. So it's been amazing just connecting with awesome people across the world, the great minds, right? So for those of you who don't know, we teach that there are 8 areas of life. And each of these 8 areas are directly related to a certain energy center or a chakra. So as we understand, as Nikola Tesla said, everything in the universe is energy, frequency, and vibration. We have to then turn our attention within to begin to really get to know and become one with the energy centers. Proven at UCLA University by Professor Valerie Hunt in the 70s, and so on and so forth. So when we bring that attention within, we begin to experience and explore the world in a different way. Because the external world, everyone just take a breath and just let this drop. The entire external world is a projection of your internal world. It's a projection of your internal environment. Therefore, if you wish to live an abundant life and a beautiful life and a joyful life, you must look at all the 8 areas of life and analyze where you are from 1 to 10, the different frequencies, the different wounds, the different blockages, so often from childhood, in the different 8 areas of life. And when you do this, you can literally, consciously, energetically raise the frequency in the primary block, in the main block, that's keeping you stuck in every single of the 8 areas of life. And it always evolves. And then we spiral up the spine. Right, and we breathe from the first energy center, the root energy center, which should have you feel grounded, safe, and trusting, and knowing that you've always been guided from that space with healthy, beautiful physical health, up to the second energy center, which we'll perhaps discuss later or soon, into the mental and emotional, because most people don't remember that the quality of our most prominent and dominant emotion is the quality of our life. How you feel the majority of the time is your perceived quality of life. So if you don't begin to expand your awareness from the mental pre-analytical thinking cortex, from the thinking, and drop into your heart and begin to feel, then you miss the beauty of everything. So this process is incredible because we find experts in each of the 8 areas of life. You don't have to listen to all the crazy stuff that I say, but experts in those different areas of life. And Ben Joseph Stewart was one of the first men, the people that inspired me towards this awakening, and a good man to follow at benjosephstewart.com. And hanging out with you, Shay, is always a privilege and a pleasure. So we want to bring you experts in the different areas of life. We are incredibly inspired. We're getting a lot of yeses, which is incredible, Shay. Really cool to see that people are like, yeah, let's do it. And the next guest, we will not reveal who it is, but it's going to be a very interesting conversation.
It is indeed. Yeah, I'm super excited for it. And it's just opening up new doorways and opportunities, and just always interesting to hear perspectives of others, and maybe not necessarily always agreeing with what they have to say, but just to hear a new perspective, new way of life, and see where they're coming from. And certainly next week is very exciting because we've got this live event happening, and it's going to be a censored interview. So you join Dr. ETV today, you can subscribe and get access to all the previous interviews that we've done, as well as the interview next week with this, I won't say his name or her name. It could be a woman. We don't know.
You just gave it away that it's a dude.
Yeah, but you were speaking to the area of life, you know, working through the spine essentially. And is there any kind of area or emotion that you've had to break through and that's been a catalyst for you to overcome in your life, or a story that's relevant to share? To give people some context as to what you mean as to like having this awakening or this process of like coming through the body.
Yeah, huge. Coming through the body, to be able to understand that the vessel, the body, is where the soul dwells. It's the expression of the soul through the body that is our quality of life, you know, not needing motivation as an external push, because we have inspiration as an internal pull. When the higher self, the spirit and the soul, is integrated with the lower self, the body, the mind, and the emotion, anchored in the heart, you're living a powerful, profound, universally guided experience. To answer your question, it brings me back to, you know, that's one of the things that we learn in a lot of personal development is vulnerability. Because back in the day when I was strong and fit and, you know, in my masculine and, you know, over masculine, let's put it that, strength, and that's how I survived. You know, when I was young, I was growing up. I had to be strong in the mental. I thought that anyway. And so I suppressed, and I'm speaking to all you masculine beings out there, not just men, but you that are too caught up in the busyness and the grind and the rut and the mental thinking of things and the doing of things and the controlling of things. I'm speaking to you to drop into, allow yourself to be consciously aware of how you can drop into vulnerability, because there in that space you grow true spiritual character. So it reminds me of a story that you know has me become needing to be vulnerable with you, and this is a beautiful space. So when I was growing up, and as I go through this, I'd like you to consider how the emotion of guilt, the lower frequency of guilt, you know, on the Hawkins scale of consciousness, the frequency that Dr. Hawkins measured to guilt, the vibrational scale of guilt is 30 hertz. Okay? 30. Fear is 100, and love as comparison is 528. So fear, and then lower than fear you have shame, and then basically 0 hertz is death. There's no vibration, there's no life. So Dr. Hawkins was able to quantify that guilt, as the emotion, is one of the most destructive emotions you can feel. And what you did or didn't do in the past, whatever that thing is that you're feeling most guilty for, take a breath. That thing that you know in your mind that is still stealing energy from you, life force from you, that is the thing that you need to heal. And that's what we do in the second energy center, either in the 3-day live event or in the 8-week online event. So you can do it wherever you are in the world. You can just go to drespen.com, DRESPEN.com, and you can read up about it. And so, excuse me, it brings me to a very vulnerable space for me. So when I was growing up, I grew up in a tiny little town in Norway called Arendal, which is what the movie Frozen is based on. If there's anyone watching from Norway, I'd love to say hi. I love you. Jeg savner dere masse. Elsker dere. That means I miss you, love you, miss my fellow Vikings. And as I was growing up, my brother passed away when I was 5, and then my sister was born disabled 2 years later, my beautiful little sister Katinka. And so when we grew up as a family, it was a lot of uncomfortable times. And again, relating it back to the watchers, the viewers, to the listeners, to find trauma, to be okay, to sit with that for a moment in your life. And so when I grew up, it was a tough environment, considerably and emotionally. And so the way I learned to survive or protect myself as a young boy growing up after, finding my brother passing away in his room and the trauma of my mum losing her son, all of the above you could imagine. I didn't know how to deal with this at the time because I didn't have the emotional intelligence, or at least we've started to get a bit more of it now, I guess. And so the way I protected myself was to be strong. All right, so someone would mess with me, I would be physically strong, I'd be fast, I could run, I could do very athletic things. And so that was my survival mechanism, fight or flight, basically. Instead of, the rest and digest, the sympathetic nervous system of survival, instead of the parasympathetic sympathetic nervous system of the God flow system, where you co-create with source in the moment. There is fear and there is love. There's no other, there's two states, right? And so I was vibrating from the fear state. And when I was challenged, that's how I would survive. And what ended up happening was that as I grew up, I was actually very sad in parts of me because my brother was dead and I didn't know how to deal with it. But I was a very, very happy boy. But in certain topics, I would be, of course, sad. And so what happened is that I got in fights. So people tried to, mess with me and other things. And I was strong at the time. I was a kickboxing instructor and whatever. And then I got in some fights and some people got hurt. So I'm talking about when I was a teenager, I used to, when I got drunk and sometimes go out and have a punch out on the town. Never a big troublemaker, anything like that. But, I ended up over the years hurting a couple of people. And so as I was growing up, then as I came to Australia, 2005, ended up, jumping into my degrees and researching, etc. And it wasn't until many years later, and I'd like you to consider this, what we're talking about here is guilt. Okay? And talking about what you may or may not have done in the past that's still haunting you emotionally and energetically. So as we go through this process, together so you can journey with us. That's part of what we do here on this channel, is we want to make sure that you get the results through and that you have an activity at the end. You can follow through on this in your life, right? And so for me, I hurt these people. Right, a broken jaw, some lost teeth, and a guy, terrible scar on his face, and I had a lot of guilt because I hurt those people, and I love people. And so when I came to Australia, I folded my first company. I didn't do really well when I graduated with my doctorate in 2009. And then I started doing this work, this deep emotional work, because I remembered that the quality of my life is the quality of what I feel the majority of the time. And I learned as a scientist to go back to look at the start of life. Listen carefully, everyone. Big breath. This changed my life. The imprint period, when you're young, from the ages of 1 to about 7, that's when your program is built, just like the program on your computer. So what you feel and your thoughts, patterns, indoctrinations, behaviors, and limiting beliefs, etc., all your beliefs from childhood, they stem from that. The majority of them stem from the imprint period. My imprint was that of protecting myself in this way. So if we are to shift it, we have to go back. We have to go to the thing that we did or didn't do, whatever you're feeling guilty for. We have to sit with it. You have to heal the situation with a higher level of awareness. So at that point, I was a teenager. I got in some fights. I came to Australia. I started doing the healing journey. And as we researched this curriculum over many years, I was sitting with the facilitators. And so the trained facilitators at the live events and also at the online program, they were on me because I was doing the work. And they were asking the question, Espen, what are you guilty for? And I could bring out this and that and this and that. And I just had so many things. Now, again, I'm not saying you should be guilty. That's not the process here. I'm asking you to understand that guilt is at 30 hertz, 30 hertz, and that you can heal it. You don't have to be dysfunctional guilt. You can transform fear to fuel, because guilt is based on the primary emotion of fear. So you can transform that into ascension, right? And so I'm sitting with the facilitators, and they're on me, man. And they're going, what are you guilty for? Tell me more about it. And that suddenly, and as you learn to understand human neurology and physiology and psychology, you can begin to see how people are communicating with you using their body language. And only 7% is said is verbal, and the rest is body language and tonality. So they were on me until I started squirming, until I started moving. They knew that they hit that deep seed, that deep wound that was in the unconscious mind. And I said, oh, what I really feel guilty about is like when I was young, I was growing up, I was, feeling alone and stressed and whatever else. And I got in punch-ons and I hurt people. Okay, so my guilt was around hurting people. And then I learned many years ago from one of my mentors, an incredible man by the name of Dr. John DeMartini. I've done a lot of Dr. John's work, which is very, 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 very powerful, very mental. But what I feel is missing is the emotional intelligence, because you don't manifest just what you think. You manifest what you're able to think and feel at the same time. That is the key. And right now we're living in a mental society. We're not living in a deeply embodied emotional society. And that's the key here, because the second energy center is directly related to your mental and emotional state. The second energy center, the sacral chakra, the Swadhisthana, is blocked by the number one thing I spoke about, which is guilt. So if you want to improve sex life, because it's sexual organs we're talking about here, creativity, freedom, flow, fun, and be expressed as who you are, show the artist and the poet and the musician and the dancer and whoever you are, show that to the world with beauty like a flower. It just blossoms, right? Then you have to clear your guilt from the past. 30 hertz. And so I'm sitting there, the facilitators are on me. And eventually, when I shared that I was really feeling guilty about hurting these 4 people, I remembered this sentence that Dr. John DeMartini taught me, and it was simply, the void drives the value. So just take a moment to either write that down or repeat that in your mind. The void drives the value. And so what that means, my friends, is that the void, what you perceive to be missing, what you're mentally perceiving to be missing, drives what you seek. The void drives the value. So as an example, if I'm not in a loving relationship, I seek a loving relationship. If I don't have money and I have a void of money, I seek money. If I don't have good health, then I seek good health. The void drives the value. Okay, make sense? So let that sink in. Let's really try and embody that so we can master that through life. And so the void for me, in that sense, was, of course, that I had hurt these people. I had guilt that I hurt these people. And then I understood that the void drives the value. And when the facilitators were on me, one of my facilitators, an incredible woman, she said, what are the benefits? And this is the work that we do in the 3-day event and in the online program. One of the questions is finding the actual benefits behind what you did. I'm not saying you should go back and redo it. I'm saying it's an issue in the tissue. There's either fear or love. If you haven't healed it, it's draining your energy and most likely making you sick. Yes. So as an issue in the tissue, or I call it a diagnosis, right? As a physician. But the point is that guilt is most likely and scientifically proven on the Hawkins scale of 30 hertz, more dangerous for you than other things. So I sat with the guilt and she asked this question, right? And the question was, what are the benefits? What are the benefits to the world? What are the benefits to the world around what you did? And of course, the right away, the egoic mind goes into full protection. Are you telling me, you're trying to tell me there's benefits behind me hurting these people? Because that's the analytical mind. But when you look at the way the universe works, everything is in balance, and equilibrium is a fundamental universal truth. So yes, there are just as many drawbacks as there are benefits, and there are just as many benefits, there are drawbacks. But when your brain is polarized, when you believe, perceive, and therefore you achieve that what you did or didn't do draws with it, brings with it more drawbacks than benefits, you can't leave the wound of the past because you're stuck in that mental pattern. So you break the pattern. You raise the level of awareness and you see it for what it really is. And then you ask good questions. And the question was, what are the benefits to the world around what you did when you were violent? And again, I'm not saying I would have done it again. I'm talking about the mental and emotional healing of the tissues and raising the vibration. And so I couldn't come up with many. The pen doesn't move. When there's a block, it's just cloud. It's just nah. And they were on me. And eventually she asked the question in a different way and it popped. And I literally felt the click in my brain. And then I realized something. The void drives the value. What you perceive is missing in your life is what you see, is what you seek and what you search for. And so it dawned on me. At that time, I did 6 years in clinical practice. We started a company in 2011 called the Bonfire Health Group, and we did 8 of those clinics over 6 years' time. And some of them went to 7 figures, and we helped thousands of people through the doors every single week with holistic medicine, dentistry, chiropractic, X-rays, yoga, Pilates, nutrition, education, events, etc. And so I hadn't practiced at that time. I'd finished practicing, and then I started doing touring full time. And then she's on me, and when she asked that question, what was been the benefit to the world in that moment, and just let this drop. And again, before I share this with you, remember, go back in time for a moment. And if you haven't covered it yet, if you haven't felt it yet, if you haven't found it yet, you go back and listen to this over and over and over and over and over again until you have depolarized the wound. Okay, come to the 3-day event. Do the 8-week online program. Because this is an explanation. This is not, you don't get the same level of transformation, but you can start the journey by going back in time and finding what the wound was. What did I do that makes me feel more guilty? When you've identified that in your mind's eye, whatever you did or didn't do that you feel guilty, then write that down and then listen to this again. So I'm sitting there with her, right, the facilitator, and suddenly I feel this click in my brain, and the pen started moving, and the tears started running down my face. And I literally felt like, when you got goosebumps in your whole body, it was that times 1,000. And tears, I wasn't crying, it was just tears running, snot running. And the pen started going, and I was flowing. And what happened is I was able to unblock that literal block in my nervous system that had been on autopilot for so many years, perceiving, believing, therefore achieving that what I did back then was something that had more drawbacks than benefits. So that it was anchored in guilt. And at that moment, when she did this, and we do this work in the events, as I said, I could finally see, my analytical mind could catch up to the emotional wound. That the void inside of me, the feeling that I made massive mistakes, it's a really bad thing to do. That void, I hurt those people. That drove the value to help as many people as possible. And by the time I finished in clinic and started touring, I had personally had a chance to help 12,000 people in clinical practice, as a yoga teacher, as a presenter, but in person. 12,000 people. And when my prefrontal cortex could intellectualize that the void inside of me, the feeling that I needed to make a difference because I needed to make it right, when my mind could see that, and I could understand that 12,000 people had been helped because I was on such a mission to make it right and to help people. At that moment, the wound completely collapsed. And that's what we call a quantum collapse. So the guilt that I had inside me for all these years was actually the seed that created an opportunity to help so many people. And as I was finished bawling my eyes out, probably half an hour, my arm is cramping, just writing. I wrote a hole through the paper with all the benefits that I could see now finally from what I did back then. And I went to the toilet, and here's the disgusting part. This is the stuff that's not so, fun to share. Bit of vulnerability coming in. I went to the toilet, snotty and, having cried so much and all the good stuff. And then I went to pee. And what came out was not pee. It was not urine. It was something more dense. And I'm clearly not telling you this to impress upon or to impress you, but rather perhaps to impress upon you that what happened, and I know this, I understand the scientific, this is what we teach you, the science behind this and the consciousness, bringing the quantum field into it and doing it to upgrade the physical tissue. Because remember, the blockage of guilt is the number one block of the second energy center. So that's related to your reproductive organs, kidneys, bowels. Make sense? So you look at these systems, these specific areas of life. I went to the toilet, I peed, bladder, obviously. And what came out was thick and dense. And I know it, not just to be an issue in the tissue or diagnosis, but I know it was disease. It was stored in my body from when I was a teenager, which was guilt. And it created more and more blocked energy, lower frequency, dense, destructive energy, until my brain and nervous system could upgrade the awareness. And I peed what looked like, pus for 10, 15 seconds. I almost passed out. And after that, the pain in my lower back went away. I hardly have any lower back pain now. I became incredibly more flexible, and finally my creativity could begin to flow. I could work now from a space of, wow, I see it. I could work from a place of compassion, a place of passion, a place of, when the second energy center is open, your creativity, your creative flow and expression. Look at a flower. It just blossoms. It doesn't compare itself to anyone. It just blossoms. So I was able to come back to more creative states. And of course, when you're present and you're healed in that sense, you can allow your energy to flow. So that's one of the 8 upgrades that we do in the events. But it was really powerful because my mental and emotional well-being went through the roof.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode and for listening to this podcast. I really hope you enjoyed this series, and if you'd like to listen to the full episode and get more conscious content online, tune into our online video platform at earthheroestv.com. Hope you have a great day, guys, and a huge love from me, and see you next time.